in the Bill of Rights in Ontario. But here in Quebec, there's nothing that defines how you're going to work towards gaining more autonomy, talking about diapers or helping the people to go to the toilet instead of putting them on diapers. That's one example. Yeah. So this is why I think we need a law where basic services are enshrined.
The last forum on long-term facilities, there's a special that came to say that if you put a diaper on someone who's not incontinent, which is the norm, you are mistreating that person. And it is the norm ordered by the ministry. Even though you're not incontinent, they put you diaper because they don't have time to bring you to washrooms.
We are talking today about the about conditions and about the level of care in long-term care centers in Quebec. The toll-free line, it's 1-877-597-4500. We have about 9 minutes left. We've been talking with Pierre Hurtaud and Paul Brunet, both from the Conseil pour la protection des malades. I want to speak with someone who lives in one of those centers, Jonathan Marchand, a resident of a center in Quebec City for 5 years or so, and he's on the line. Hi there, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi, Sean.
Thanks for coming on the program. So we have been talking for the last 50 minutes or so about the care and asking, is it good enough, and trying to get examples of what it's like. What can you tell me?
Well, actually, Paul and Mr. Hurtaud are right. The level of care is not appropriate, and I don't think it will be anytime soon. And my question is, has it ever been adequate?
What makes you say that it is not now and perhaps has never been?
Because I believe that institutions at their core foster abuse. There's no way to reform that system so that it doesn't violate basic human rights. My situation, for example, I want to get out of the CHSLD. I don't want to live here the rest of my life. And I don't think anyone deserves to live what is a prison. You know, there needs to be alternatives to those places. We need to have community-based services. To me, that's the solution. And those places like CHSLD needs to be phased out and closed down.
So we've been talking about, for 40 minutes now about how to improve things and sort of basic levels of care, but you're going in a different direction. You're saying they shouldn't exist. But if they don't exist, then where does that leave us?
Well, community-based services, I mean, many countries have done it. They've developed services in the community so that people can remain in their natural living environment, surrounded by their friends and their families. That's the solution. It's not to force people into institutions. People have seen the light in that regard. And for people with disabilities like myself, there's the CRPD from the United Nations, which stipulates that the people with disabilities have the right to remain in the community, even if they need 24-hour assistance, like myself.
Jonathan Marchand, I want to ask you one last question here, because we've been talking about the level of care, but we've also we've brought up a few times that most people who do the jobs in these centers probably want to do better. Is that your sense, that most people go in and want to do a very good job and provide a high level of care?
Yeah, that's my experience. But there's a fundamental issue that's never raised.
Which is what?
Which is that, for example, you as a patient, because when you're in a CHSLD, you're not a person, you're not a citizen, you're now a patient which is a medical object of care, you don't have a choice in who provides services for you. For example, you'll be in your room and someone will come in and they need to wash your private parts. Now, you have no choice, no say in who is going to do that task. So that's very demeaning. It's, your personal integrity doesn't count for anything. And when you enter in a facility, you need to submit to those rules. And you learn that very quickly. So that's demeaning to the patient, that's demeaning to the worker as well. And no one wins in that scenario. And it creates all kinds of problems. And that's one of the reasons why institutions like CHSLD have no place in our society.
Mr. Marchand, I am so glad I got a chance to speak with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's Jonathan Marchand. He's a resident at a CHSLD in the Quebec City area. Gentlemen, we have a challenge here because now we have less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And he brings up quite an extraordinary thing. He's saying that these centers just should not exist at all, and I want to ask you about that. I also want to ask you about cameras. So let's start with Jonathan Marchand's suggestion.
Depending on your age and your ability to feel and want to be freer, of course, it is a good thing. And in the ministerial orientations of 2003, the residence in long-term facility was the last alternative for anyone who needed care 24 hours a day. And even then, some societies provide that kind of care. So everything is there. Let's provide adequate care to home where people want to stay. Even that has been cut, Sean.
Okay. In the meantime, because we're so badly running out of time, we keep talking about adequate levels of care. We have heard these stories of families that have brought in cameras. There are these new rules that were just published in the official Gazette. They say that residents and their families will be allowed to install them. Some people say, well, this is great news. You don't agree.
Sean, people have been putting cameras for the past 15 years in long-term facilities. As our colleague from Ontario said, nothing was illegal there. But there's a common denominator. Families have put cameras when their complaints was not followed up, lacking supervision. If we do that upwards, better training, better supervision, guess what? People won't need to put cameras because the administration will have done its job by supervising and sanctioning the very rare but some stupid employers who are still working in these facilities.
Monsieur Hurtaud, I have a few seconds left. Does that make sense to you that if these basic things were being respected, then there'd be no need for the cameras? Because obviously some families think that the camera affords a level of protection, of comfort.
Well, I can't say that there will never be an ideal situation where these cameras would not be necessary. But I think that before introducing the cameras, or as you introduce the cameras, there's a lot more you have to do. And we do believe that there is a need for a law that enshrines the services and the basic rights of long-term care patients.
Pierre Hurtaud, Vice President of the Conseil pour la protection des malades, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And Paul Brunet, the head of that same group, really appreciate your time. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Sean.
This is Radio Noon. My name is Sean Appel. Our email address is radnoonm@cbc.ca.
We believe aging